Morning, as advertised, it is a radio lecture EDC 241, and the first week is the usual, where we introduce you to definitional issues of the concept of the course itself, and then also gives you an opportunity to appreciate what psychology is in its broad spectrum, in as well as when you narrow it, what it can be when you take it into education. So we look at implications as well, what implications mean when it comes to education. And so my name is Samuel OFORI DANQUAH from the Department of Counseling Psychology, and on behalf of the team, we welcome you to yet another beautiful semester. And for all level 200s pursuing this program, we say welcome on board, make the best that you can with this course, as well as its educational implications, and then the personal benefits of the content that we will share with you variously. So this morning, we are looking at psychology of human development and learning. And the topic for the day is definitional issues, principles of growth and development and its educational implication. I go over that again. Definitional issues and principles of growth and development and its educational implications. It's quite a sentence, though. This morning, we will look at some of the key aspects of psychology of human development and learning. And so we're looking at definitional issues, that definition of psychology. We'll look at goals of psychology, growth, maturation, and development. And then we'll look at domains of development. And then, obviously, we're coming into the principles of growth and development and its educational implications. And so I encourage you to get a pen, a paper, or possibly you can record and subsequently use it as a reference material in your learning processes. When we talk about psychology, many people have so much misconceptions, and they attribute psychology to one's ability to be able to read people's minds, and then the person is capable of making probably extra physical has extra physical abilities and is able to tell what may happen in the future and stuff like that. Well, that is not psychology. Basically, psychology, in its definition, refers to the scientific study of behavior and the mental processes of a living organism. And so once behaviors are there, psychology offers you the opportunity to understand why people do what they do, and also gives you the opportunity to also understand how people process what is within their environments based on their cognitive abilities. And so Myers and the World 2018 defines that as psychology being a scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. So some key words in here are science, behavior, and mental processes. So when we say science, it means that they have a methodical way of processing. And when we talk about behaviors, those things that outwardly are demonstrated or put out for us to see, and then they process the cognitive ability of an individual or persons as they live life from birth to death. So we further look at psychology as a way of exploring how the individual thinks, like I said, individually. So the key areas, including the cognition, emotion, perception, and behavior of an individual, or here otherwise referred to as a living organism, is one of the key reasons why we study psychology, or the definition of psychology, what psychology is. Now, when you look at some of the predates of the term psychology, or the word psychology, it's derived out of two Greek words, psyche and logia or logos, where psyche means that the mind, or means things of the mind or attributes of the mind, and logia means the study of something, so to learn, to appreciate what it is. And so basically mind studying or studying of the mind. And of course, when you study the mind, definitely the mind is also encapsulated in a containment. And so it runs this containment, that's the body, and how the body reacts all comes in when you are studying psychology. What are the goals of psychology if we want to look at it? So Kuhn et al. 2019 enumerates 4 goals of psychology, and for the purposes of our study, this reference is key. And it is said that psychology can be placed into 4 perspectives. This is why it says that psychology describes behavior, psychology explains behavior, psychology predicts behavior, and psychology controls behavior. So if we are really understanding what the goals are, then the goal is to be able to learn and describe behaviors. So by describing behaviors, you would have to watch, observe, and be able to understand the mental processes, how people do what they do and why. And you want to explain. So after understanding, then you know why that behavior occurred. So a boy crosses the road at every day 7:15 a.m. and at a particular day at 7:15 a.m. a car was crossing at that particular moment and the boy still crossed the road. What happens? The car likely may hit the boy. And so the explanation may be that because the boy has become routinely adaptive, you may consider that then there's something which was lacking in terms of his processing of the environment. And so we can now understand why that incident might have occurred. And so that then leads us to predicting. So then it helps us to predict or anticipate behaviors in a given situation, why something may happen if an element is taken out or added. And so these are some of the things that one of the key goals of psychology. And the last not least is to control behaviors. This is not like saying like remote controlling people, no. It is to help us understand, yes, help us to predict, yes, and then helps us to understand if we are able to do A or B, then it can help the person modify. So that little boy who crosses at 7:15 a.m. every morning at that crossing, level crossing, or what we call the zebra crossing, that child, what can we do to help that child now understand that it is not only at 7:15 on the dot that you cross, but then you may need to watch left, right, and left again and process the environment, then you cross. Once that happens, then we have modified behavior. So we control the behavior of that individual. And so that is one of the key goals of psychology. Then we come into the human development aspects of psychology. When we look at human development, usually people will say development is an encapsulation of all the aspects or attributes of the living organism. That is perfect. And then we would add that it is also the scientific study of how and why people grow. So not just looking at the growth, but why people grow, why they change and adapt across their lifespan. And so like a little boy would grow maybe, this is 5 years, in the next 5 years, crossing that same crossing, getting himself across the road at that same crossing may have been modified because by the next 5 years, his cognitive abilities would have improved, and then we would have seen that this once a child now, this toddler, or now a child or a boy, would consider variously before he or she may cross that road. And so we say that development focuses on understanding the physical, cognitive, emotional, social, and moral changes that occurs from conception to death. So from conception to death, all the things that will go on in an individual's life is development. And so human development is the span between conception, birth, and death. And so, if you are alive today, you are still developing. And there are a lot of things that goes into your development. And this branch of psychology examines the development, psychology of human development examines both universal patterns of development and individual variations. Like I did mention, we are all human, but we are not same. And this has issues linked to a lot of patterns in our environment and our biological makeup. It explores how biological, environmental, and cultural factors influence growth and behavior, like I did say. And so sometimes the environment one finds him or herself contributes. Not most times, the environment you are giving birth into contributes so much to who you become eventually. And then, for example, the food you may eat and all that has influences on how you grow. So your genetics come in here. And so we can never look at growth and then not consider, or we never look at human development and not look at what goes on in your environment. Even your culture. In my mother's culture, they do depot. And so at the depot level, it tells us that this girl is of age and is ready to go to the next level of the human lifespan or development. And so these are some of the things that psychology of human development considers as ways of enhancing why we should learn and understand the human mind, and at each of the stages of development, what are some of the landmark features to be attained, for example, and what can be done within that space. And so this leads us to growth, maturation, and development. This interlaced becomes like wache. I always use food to sometimes. Yes, if you cook rice, it is just rice. If you cook beans, people will say it is beans or gobe. I mean, no, that's not gobe. That is beans. But if you add your rice and you add your beans to that, you will have wache. So development is the encapsulation of growth and maturation. Let me take you through this and let's see if it makes meaning. All right. So growth is the physical changes such as height, weight, and size. In my first lecture with my students in communication, I remember we had the opportunity to select two ladies to stand in front. Fortunately for us, all of them were 23 years. And so I asked the question, though they are 23, fortunately too, their birth months were like a year or two apart. But their sizes, if I use the word ridiculous, I mean, it's just for literal purposes, ridiculously wide. The difference was so wide in terms of body size, height, yes, and they were all 23 years. So you can understand that our growth, though we look at the size and then the height, it tells us we should be able to measure and know that this person, even though he's 23, is probably like 5'7". This other person is 23, is 4'8". That's 4 feet 8. Right, so that we can measure, we can quantify body mass. You stand on a scale, and then we are able to check your weight. Somebody is 23, but weighs probably 78 kilograms. Somebody is 23 years, weighs 92. Right, so these are what we look out for when we talk about growth. And this is genetically influenced. What he or she takes from the father and mother are not the same as you took from your father and your mother. And so when you are birthed, you come in with these genes which influences. Of course, your environment influences how these genes also react, right? So we look at maturation. Maturation is the aspect of you or the individual or the living organism that is more geared towards intellectual or emotional aspects of development. And so these are the changes which are largely qualitative. And so your ability to scan your environment, weight it, and balance, and know maybe if I took 3 steps, I'll get it. Somebody may say I'll take 4 steps to make the same distance. These are naturally not measured, but your ability to do it and achieve the results, intended purposes, is what we look at maturation. So you have earned the landmark feature of your ability to possibly understand what you are told and process it to produce outcomes or results. So like I did in the initial stage, the analogy of the watch it thing, and development then becomes the comprehensive changes, including physical, cognitive, emotional, and social abilities of an individual or a living organism. So human development entails growth and maturation. And so the development is the key umbrella, and under it we have maturation and we have growth. And so when you put them together, we say the person is developing, or has developed, or is underdeveloped. So, well, today is not a political day, so I will not talk about developing countries. All right. So we take a dash to look at the domains of development. When we talk about the domains of development, we are looking at one, the physical domain, cognitive domain, emotional, and we look at the emotional domain, in as well as we look at that's emotional and social domains, emotional and social domains. So let's take a look at physical domain. The physical domain involves or includes growth and changes in the body size, organs and organ systems, motor skills, physical health, etc. So like the coordination between hand and feet, eye and hand, all these things come into the physical domain. If you are climbing the stairs and then you would put always the right foot first and then you follow it to the left, put the right foot, the left, the right foot, the left. Well, these are motor skills that are coordinated by your cognitive abilities. But then you should be able to demonstrate it in the body expressing these skills or abilities. And so we look at the physical domain, that is growth and changes in the body. The sizes, your foot at year 3, probably the shoe size was just about, let's say 6. But now that's infant size 6. Now that you are 21 years, you wear adult size, possibly 6 still. But the 6 is adult size 6, and then you were wearing infant size 6 at year 3. And so there is quite an amount of growth or change physically that we can see. Then your head, like mine, that is big like this. As a child, it was big, but it wasn't as this big. And so you can see a change in the size as I was when I was 4 or 5 years. And as at this age, I find myself, the size is different. So same with other organs we have. I normally laugh at my little ladies in lecture, and I tell them that by age 11 or 13, they should have at least a tennis ball size breast cap size. And then by 24, 25, like the one standing in front of me here, they should have expanded, or when they give birth, you should see some amount of expansion. And so these are physical. Now let's look at the cognitive domain. This involves changes in thinking, problem solving, memory, creativity, language skills, etc. So how are you able to work yourself up to solving problems within your environment? Like I did indicate, this young boy who at 5 crosses the street at 7:15 a.m. every morning or every weekday morning to school. Now, when he's 10 years, it's expected that he would have improved on processing his environment and the conditions within his environment. And so he should be able to know that the bicycle that is coming at this speed of 20 kilometers per hour, possibly he doesn't stand the chance of crossing the road before the bicycle gets to him in the middle of the road. And so might have to wait for the bicycle to cross, by which time it will be 7:16. But because he now understands his environment, he may will to do the 7:16 option than doing the 7:15 and getting knocked down and eventually not making it to school. Right. So this is the cognitive domain aspect of development. Then we look at this emotional and social domain. Feelings, relationships, social skills, and moral reasoning. So between this person and that person, you have a friend who leads you to study, and you have a friend who leads you to watch a football match. You need to build a relationship in such a way that the relationships meet your expectations, meet your satisfaction. So the feelings you have towards both friends are gained out of the experiences you have had with them. And so it helps you at each point in time in your life to know which of the relationships around you can meet your expectation and help you deal with your feelings, for example. And so social networking skills are also here when it comes to emotion and social domain. And then moral reasoning. When you go to church, you are taught something in church. When you go to the mosque, you are taught something in the mosque. When you're a traditional practicing person, you are taught a lot of moral lessons. Then it's left with you to decide at what point you utilize each of these moral opportunities of life that you are left with. And so basically, when we look at these options, then we would have looked at the domains of development when we come into psychology of human development and learning. And I believe you are making notes, and then in a few minutes we would be opening the phone lines for you to call or send in your text messages ahead on 0503923158. You can do WhatsApp and SMS. That's for traditional messages. I go over the numbers again: 0503923158, and we would do you the needful. We'll read your messages, and then we will discuss them as well. So it can be a question or a contribution. It's so accepted.
This is Radio Winneba 98.3 FM. Follow us on our various social media handles. On Facebook is Radio Winneba 98.3 FM, or Instagram Radio Winneba 98.3 FM, Twitter at Winneba 983 FM, YouTube is Radio Winneba 98.3 FM, WhatsApp and text us on 0503 923 158, or contact us on 050 3923 158 or 033 2320 201 or 033-2322-499. You can listen to us on our website www.uaw.edu.gh. Radio Winneba, the ultimate in-campus radio.
So you welcome back to Radio Winneba 98.3 FM, the series radio lecture, and this morning it is EDC 241, Psychology of Human Development and Learning, and the introductory lecture has been on or has dealt with so far definition of psychology, goals of psychology, growth and maturation and development. We've just looked at domains of development, and then we take the last lap, which is principles of growth and development and its educational implications. And so, principles of human development. FM. When we talk about principles of human development, we look at principles as a set of items that are tested and will provide you the expected results once you follow them through. And so principles that characterize the patterns and process of growth and development is what we are looking at. So we are here this morning to look at these principles. So if you have time, take a pen and a paper and continue the lecture, writing down these basic items. They are basic now, but I tell you, you might see them in your exam. So growth is directional. When you say growth is directional, it is divided into two principles. Now we look at these principles as cephalocodal. Let me take my time to pronounce CEPHALOCAUDAL, and proximodestal. And so these are the two principles. So when we look at cephalocodal principle, we are saying that it describes the direction of development and states that development proceeds from top to bottom. And so from beginning of your conception, we see some of the things that we do, some of the things that happens in your growth or your development, coming from the head to the bottom. And so, and we also have a lot of the activities from generated from top down. And then this principle involves how best you can grow, understanding the hierarchies, that's the topmost issues or the topmost items are supposed to be looked at first, and then you develop down into the list. And so, I'm adding the principle of implications as well to the discussion, though. And then when you look at the proximodestal principle, which sometimes gets people confused, is that the principle states development proceeds from the center of the body outward. This is very simple. So, for example, look at my arm. When a child is giving birth to, the arm actually is active. Then subsequently, the fingers pick their scales. And so it starts from the arm, which is the central point of all the functioning of the muscle. And then eventually the hand picks up scales. The fingers pick up scales and is able to now move independently. Sometimes they move together. Then along the development, each of them is able to move on its own to do or perform certain tasks. And so that is what we mean by the proximodestal principle. So from the center outward, and that is what it is. And so we also move to the next principle, which is development is continuous. Development is continuous. This principle of development goes on continuously throughout life. Even after maturity has been attained, development does not end. So somebody would ask the question, so if you say somebody is matured, so the person is 60 years or the person is 65 years, we say the person is matured, does the person still develop? Yes, we still develop, because organs and some parts of the body will still develop by shrinking, for example. So then our cognitive strength begins also, like for example, our visual strength also begins to suffer decay, for example. And these are all development. So development may all not always be in the exponential growth in heights, but sometimes the decline is also called development. And so sometimes you say the person is underdeveloped, or the person is less developed, or the person is well developed. And so we look at the next principle as development is sequential or normative. So every species or living organism follows a certain pattern of development to it. This pattern is same for everyone. So until exceptions are attained or activated, every child is, for example, expected to what? Crawl before he or she what? Creeps and then stands, and then walks, and then babbles before talking. But there are exceptions anyway. But all things being equal, largely this is the sequence of growth. And this is a sequence of development, for example. So if the person is developing in this pattern, then it is said as sequential. Majority of us have gone through that pattern. And so that is what we call sequential. Then we look at development as development proceeds from general to specific. So we look at development proceeding from general to specific. So generally, we acquire some basics as infants after birth. We are able to make general movements with the eyes, the arms, the legs. Then eventually, for example, the legs, we begin to crawl with it, and then we beginning to creep, and then we begin to now walk, staggering at the beginning, and then eventually we gain fine walking skills or movement skills. And so we say development proceeds from general to specific. You babbled, then subsequently you gain some 2-letter words and then 3-letter words, then you were able to now put words into sentences, and then eventually now you rattle like black hole, right? And so that is what it is. And so we look at growth, we look at principles of development also as growth and development being asynchronous. Asynchronous means the rate at which development varies from person to person. So development rates are not uniform. Like I exampled with these 23-year-old ladies in my class the other day. They all are 23, but they were not same in height. Even if they were same in height, their weight could have been different from each other. Their complexion would be different, and a lot more. And same with boys and girls. When boys are 10 and girls are 10, their body size never is same. One seems to pick up after a certain age. So boys develop their physique more after 13 years. And then by 17, you see them becoming huge. But girls by 11 years are all jumpy and having a lot of flesh on them. And so these are some of the principles that human development looks at. Says growth and development is asynchronous. And then we look at another principle, that is development is influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. I did mention early on that development is influenced so much about where you find yourself. Forgive me, if you come from the place I come from, you'd realize that you may not have the chance to grow very tall. Why? Because we eat a lot of plantain, which is full of iron. And then some other places have a lot of other minerals. For example, if you come from the BA region, that's the BA area, there's a lot of mushrooms, there's a lot of cassava, plantain, yams, and then you have meat protein, high source of protein. Up north, same. And so if you look at these patterns, then you realize that our growth, the environment, is an influencer or influences how the body grows. And so some people who live in deprived communities or children in deprived communities eventually become malnourished and are unable to attain certain landmark features or growth features that are expected of an infant developing, and so may not acquire the weight probably at birth. Sometimes they are very low, And then by the time they are 7 years, their weight is as though they are still 3 or 4 years. And so you have these issues coming out of the genetic versus the environment, or the genes versus the environment. How they come together is very essential when we look at development. So we say that poor nutrition can mar the growth of an individual, and at also worse, reduce intellectual abilities and stature. And so it is scientific. It's scientific. So always try to cultivate your children in good environments and make them the best, because the food they eat, and sometimes when they serve food, they give the father the best part of the meat, the chicken, and they give the children the legs and the wings only. Papa and Mommy, we beg you, hence, give the children the best part of the protein, and the adults, they need protein, but they do not need it as much as these young ones who rather need it to form their growth, or make their growth become better. Now we are dealt with the principles. We're taking a quick dash to implications of these principles. So implication one, curriculum design should consider developmental stages. So if you are designing the curriculum to help learners, the curriculum should not avoid the stages of growth, so that when the child is 6 years, the cognitive ability of the child should match the content to be read. And then sometimes these days, when the children come home, the assignments they come with, you ask yourself, are they in the university already? And well, they say technology, and social media is a technology. It's a technology is there. Yes, AI, bright to say ancestral intelligence is available. But how long are we going to? To what extent are we going to allow AI to be the forerunner versus our natural instincts or abilities? And so curriculum developers or designers should consider the developmental stages. Even in the classroom, you, the implementer, should look at it well, and then consider the ages of your learners. Teaching methods should align with cognitive and emotional capacity. So like I exampled, when you do not appreciate, or you are not able to know the cognitive abilities of your learners, then you are possibly just wasting the time of these young ones or your learners, including yourself. And so why do you study psychology of human development learning? You study to know, to be able to know as a teacher the cognitive abilities of your learners, so that you play it into the instruction in the classroom, so that you're able to help them, so they're able to participate. So classroom activities should promote holistic development. Just sometimes some instructors or teachers would just put out activities, whether they are fun-based, academic-based, whichever, and they do not consider the holisticness of the activities, how it is going to benefit literally everyone in the class one, and then be able to also help from head to toe, so that learners are encapsulated, or they find themselves participating and benefiting wholesomely from these activities. So addressing individual differences through differentiated instruction. Most often, we do not see much of this in our schools in Ghana, but thanks to the new curriculum, differentiated learning or instruction has emerged. So once you are the instructor, facilitator, teacher, and you are studying psychology of human development and learning, it behoves on you to appreciate the differences of these learners and then provide them alternative opportunities that would complement areas that their strengths are not able to put them to or push them through. So that similarly, if a child is able to add 1 to 1 and in 30 seconds is able to do it on the chalkboard, if you gave another child one orange and another orange, that child would understand it as two same. So if you write 1 plus 1 and that child cannot appreciate, but if you put one orange and another orange and the child can say they are two, they've all done the same exercise. So we should appreciate differentiated instruction in the classroom when we know the strengths and weaknesses of our learners. And then last but not least, on the implications to education, on the principles, is that activities for children should align with the natural progression of development, moving from simple to complex. Moving from simple to complex. So like I said earlier on, development should start from where anyone can be part. So where anyone can be part, where anyone is able to be part, or where I can be part. So in simple terms, it should be from simple to complex, or known to the unknown. So we start from where I understand 2 oranges as 2, and then eventually I'm able to be moved to the board where I will see 1 orange as being the stroke 1, and then I see the next orange as the other stroke, and the plus sign as adding them, putting them together, making the same 2. And so you move me from the simple to the complex, and that becomes a very good opportunity when we have studied psychology of human development and learning. So in week 1 today, we have looked at the definition of psychology, and we said that psychology basically is the scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. And we also went to look at the goals of psychology, to which we said psychology describes behavior, explains behavior, predicts behavior, controls behavior. And then we went into growth and maturation and development, where we said growth is the physical, quantifiable physical things we see on an individual, and maturation is the qualitative abilities of an individual premised on his or her cognitive abilities, feelings, or emotions. And then we said all of these are based under development. They constitute development. So development becomes the encapsulation or the totality or the totalness or comprehensive changes that we see in an individual in the human growth processes. And so we looked also at the domains of development, and we looked at physical domain, cognitive domain, and we looked at emotional and social domains. And then we went into looking at the principles of human development, where we looked at growth as directional, and we looked at development as continuous, development as sequential, development as continuous, development as sequential, and then development as proceeding from general to specific. We have Facebook messages, and we'll take them quickly. Join us on Facebook Live, and we are grateful for the session. And so, well, for saying thank you, Tassin Gabriel, okay, from Social Studies Department, say you are doing engagement. Thank you very much, my dear. I'm so grateful. ICT, my question is before lockdown. Wow, the question is not a bit clear. Wow. So, Robert, I would entreat you came back again with your question. It's not a bit clear for attention. And let's scroll up and see if there are any from our Facebook catch. Well, Nanama Ponsa, thank you. Dad, thank you. So, J, Bad, wow. Well, these are all compliments coming in. We are grateful. Winneba is grateful. The Department of Counseling Psychology is grateful. We entreat you to participate by not just making us feel good in our heads. No, my head is big. Don't make it extra big, but participate by practicing these as we have shared them with you. And I believe it would make you the best person, because this is the only course I brag with and say we give you an academic perspective and we help you change your own understanding of life before we have left you. And so, yes, on that note, we will bring the session to an end. We thank you for joining us on the program, the radio lecture series on 98.3 FM Radio Winneba. Thanks to the production team, housing by Bright Fuga, and then also to the team at the Department of Counseling Psychology, Mr. Johnny Nyelby, and Madam Christina, our resource directors, and then also Miss Delight Kluche, who is our research person, Dr. Enusu Mahama, Dr. Anuvunga, and Dr. Amwako Mensah, and myself, and then Mr. Joshua Pojo Ndoye. We thank you all. We'll meet you in the lecture halls, and then we say, come in prepared, and then come in with all the questions you have. Would help you understand the content better and yourselves as well. On that note, it's a good morning.
Okay, so like they say in Asante, look at me now. I'm trying to put a cart before the horse here. So like they say in Swahili, I'll say Asante, Asante, as in danke, obrigado, thank you.